Postman Pat, Postman Pat, Postman Pat, and his black and white cat. All the birds are...
Greetings from Castle Goring, from Mickey, Aurora, and from me. Well, lots of stuff is taking place, so I am going to, without further ado, plunge right in with something really positive. And I have to tell you, the more I know about the Middletons, especially Catherine, but not only Catherine, is the more I like the Middletons. Their innate decency just shines through. And I'm going to start with Eve, who says, "My cousin was a computer forensic specialist. These people can go into the computers to see exactly what happened to the money and where it ended up. Use the experts. I'm sure more would come out about the people accessing the computers without the sub-postmaster's knowledge. Bank accounts of Royal Mail, Horizon, Fujitsu, employees involved should be checked also." Well, in fact, may I make the point? The post office is not the same thing as the Royal Mail. The Royal Mail is the mail itself. The post office is what handles the over-the-counter business, accepts letters, that sort of thing. So there is a small difference, significant but small. There is an awful lot going on that the government is getting itself into high gear. And I have to say, I really admire Rishi Sunak's response. I think his response is very encouraging. Passing a law to wipe out all of the convictions. And I agree with paying each of them a substantial sum in recompense. The sum of £600,000 has been mooted. Ian Hislop, who, to those of you who don't know, is quite a journalistic figure in this country and helped to run Private Eye. I don't know if he still does. In my day, Private Eye was something that it's not anymore. It's a satirical magazine. And he says $1 million. I think he's right. I think $1 million each, at least. And anybody, and that's $1 million for each person who has ended up being a victim, and for those who went to prison, double it. And for those who lost family members as a result of it, treble it. I think it's only fair, and Fujitsu should pay. I think we will find that this is a lot bigger and nastier and muckier than it appeared to be on the surface. And as Lord Arbuthnot has rightly said, it's not only Paula Venables who's responsible and should carry the can. There are other people who are also responsible. Let blame wash up on the shores where it belongs, and let them all be penalised. Now, what has come out of all of this is that the Buckleby postmaster, whose name is Hashmukh Shindagia, he was also given a suspended sentence for false accounting, and it was overturned. This was after he went to Catherine and William's wedding. He and his wife were asked to the wedding. And I think it was the following year that the account said that he was 16,000 short, and he was given a suspended jail sentence, which was ultimately quashed in July 2021. And to the Middletons' credit, including Catherine and William, they have continued to support him and patronise him. Now that's loyalty, and that's decency, and that's what I like to see. People who have a proper moral compass and adhere to it despite sensationalism and despite fashion and despite prevailing trends. We need leaders like that. Loyalty is very important. And just because somebody is accused of something, if you know that they are not guilty, even if they were convicted, which he was, the Middletons understood he was not guilty and they supported him. Is that not wonderful? They're my sort of people. And incidentally, to the woman who said to me that she's astonished that I support Andrew and Fergie, and that show me your friends and I'll tell you who you are sort of thing. They're not my friends, number one. And number two, if somebody I think has been wronged, I support them. I don't really care what the baying mob says. I care what I believe is right. So I thought it was a rather facile crack, meant to imply that I was somehow dodgy. Pathetic. Who knows? Maybe the person in question lives in Montecito. Naughty moi. Miss B says, Dear Lady C, it's highly likely that Harry's wife and her minions orchestrated attacks upon themselves to gin up sympathy and to lay the groundwork to support censorship and attacks on the First Amendment and its supporters. Samantha Markle's lawyers should investigate. Astroturfing is a standard operation amongst leftists and colour revolutionists. Astroturfing, noun, organised activity that is intended to create a false impression of a widespread, spontaneously arising grassroots movement in support of or in opposition to something, such as a political policy, that is in reality initiated and controlled by a concealed group or organisation, such as a corporation. Thank you for that very much, Miss B. I'd never heard of the term astroturfing before. Well, let me put it this way. People close to what has been going on, and I am one of them, believe that astroturfing was taking place on a massive scale. There are severe indications that the bots that were going after Samantha might somehow have, at some point, shall we say, washed up on the shores of Megania and Dorayatita. There is also the explanation that the Guppy gave in the Netflix interview as to how he had discovered that the millions of anti-Meghanian and anti-Heroldian comments were from a handful of people. Well, that was denied by investigators. There was no such conspiracy, but it did indicate that he and they, because make no doubt, let make no mistake about it, they are hand and glove together. That this was an explanation of not only how Harry and Meghan developed such phantasmagoric followers, and I have a feeling of what I have been informed about, that Meghan had practice in the matter, because her, whatever it's called, podcast, whatever it's called, the TIG, had 2 million evidently followers or subscribers or whatever you have. I'm very untechnological, as you can see. Many of whom are purchasable. So it's all an illusion. And I know that Meghan has claimed that she has been victimized when she hasn't. I can cite examples, but I will not cite examples I know privately. I'm going to cite one that everybody knows. The catastrophic 80-mile-an-hour car chase for 2 hours through the streets of Manhattan, so a few blocks around Times Square. A 2-hour car chase. Well, that's, I would suggest, an indication of astroturfing. So yes, but I don't want to get into Samantha's lawsuit. I need to be very careful what I say with regard to that, because I have no doubt that anything I said would be taken back to the opposition, and for them to examine whether it would be useful and helpful. And I'm not in the business of helping people who I think are deplorable. Leanne Anderson says, do you know anything about ITV getting the Oscars rights and they offered Meghan a role in it? What is this about? Ugh. Well, Dame Carolyn McCall. Oh, she's such a champion for liberty. Do you remember how when Meghan phoned up to say that she didn't like the fact that Piers had said he didn't believe a word out of her mouth after the Oprah interview, she gave him a choice. Carolyn McCall gave him a choice. Apologize or depart. And he departed. It's called constructive dismissal. Also, I had an incident with ITV involving Carolyn McCall, and she showed herself to be slipperier than an eel. I have absolutely no respect for her. Having said that, they did do Mr. Bates versus the post office, and I take my hat off to them with respect to that. However, the talk about Meghan being involved, what's she going to do? Collect an Oscar? Oh, Mr. DeMille, I'm so happy to accept the Oscar for the greatest actress who ever lived. Why are they playing Blowing in the Wind? I mean, what does that have to do with me? I mean, I've earned my right to this Oscar, Mr. DeMille. I've starred in all of the greatest movies that were ever made. I mean, they haven't been made yet, but let's not quibble over little trivial points after all. I mean, if I say it's so, it's got to be so. Well, what's she going to do? Give out Oscars, collect Oscars, comment on Oscars? And also, Sky decided airing the Oscars wasn't worth the money. I'm not surprised. I used to, when I was younger, love looking at the Oscars. It was glamorous, it was worthwhile. You had movie stars who acted in decent movies. Then it started to go downhill, and it started to be so third rate, so contrived. And then you had all sorts of brain dead people who are only good for mouthing lines, getting up on stage and lecturing us just because they could ape lines properly. Because really, that's what actors do. Let's face facts. I mean, it's not rocket science. And yes, some are better at it than others. But does that entitle them to tell you and me and everybody else how to lead our lives? I don't think so. And I thought, this is so tiresome and tacky. I wouldn't condescend to look at the Oscars anymore. And also, the stars, by and large, just aren't as glitzy and glamorous as they used to be. And as for some of the costumes, spare me. Let's see what if Meghan has a role. I can't imagine what her role would be, but I can imagine that any role they give her is gonna bomb. It's gonna tank. It's gonna be as unpopular as the person who is enacting it, namely Meghan. I think she is a big turn-off. But let's see what Carolyn McCall thinks. And for what it's worth, I haven't bothered to ask anybody at ITV about anything about this. My common sense tells me that any role they give Meghan to play in the Oscars will turn out to show how insignificant a loser she is and how her appeal has tanked. Yes, baby. Kate French says, Lady C, I just watched a clip where someone from the Golden Globes, allegedly, said that Meghan was invited to be part of the Suits reunion, but couldn't attend because she had something else to do. Is that true? That is contrary to what Gina Torres said in her interview and what the other cast members have said. Is this really a statement from someone from the Golden Globes, or is this more Sharkle PR spin? I have never heard the word Sharkle before. I think it's very good. Oh, it's Sharkle PR spin. It's Sharkle PR spin. Meghan actually did have an invitation. She had to go to the opening of the cesspit at the house in Montecito because the maintenance people discovered that there was stuff bubbling up from under the ground. And when they called in the engineers, it turned out that Meghan and Harry had filled up the cesspit, which was supposed to last for 200 years. In 2 years. Can you believe that? She had to go to the opening of the cesspit. And I should think that she was absolutely fascinated to look at all that she has produced. Oh, H, just look at that. Gosh, aren't we clever? Gosh, nobody else has ever produced manure like that before. I think we should go into business. Oh, yes, mate. Good idea. Good idea. I think you understand what I'm saying. Melissa Lentz says, Dearest Lady C, thank you as ever for your wonderfully articulate and erudite videos. Thank you. I enjoy them so very much. I just read this and had to share it with you. Quotes now. The Duke of Sussex, 39, is among the 4 people who will be inducted at the 21st Annual Living Legends of Aviation Awards in Beverly Hills on the 19th of January. It was announced on Wednesday. The event, hosted by John Travolta, will honour, quotes, those who have made significant contributions to aviation / aerospace, end of quotes. I am utterly flabbergasted. What has Harry possibly done to even be considered for such an award? Frankly, I know nothing about this particular recognition, but it strikes me that by honouring Harry for something he hasn't achieved merely reflects badly on the institution giving it, much like the Kerry Kennedy debacle some time ago. I thought Harry and Meghan had stopped going for faux awards. Did you hear that? She thinks that Harry and Meghan have stopped going for faux awards. I don't think that can be right, my dear, because if they stop going for faux awards, they're going to have to stop going for awards altogether. Stopped going for faux awards just to remain in the spotlight. It's more embarrassing for all concerned than something to be admired. Couldn't agree more. What might your thoughts be on this award? And have you any behind-the-scenes info on this latest grasp for attention? Thank you very much. Melissa Lentz. Well, I have spoken to people, and I think it's already rather sad and pathetic and almost depressing. You quoted People magazine, but Scabies announced it first, evidently. And John Travolta is a client of William Morris Endeavour. So, yet again, my hand scratches your back, your hand scratches mine. And it's a private award. It's not an official award. It's given by, wait for it, the Kitty Hawk Air Academy, based in Colorado. I ask you, whatever next? Oh, Mickey, darling, do you think we should nominate Harry and Meghan for the Mickey Castle-Goring Award for Ace Poo Makers of the Decade? What do you say? Yes? Okay, that's what we're going to do. Sorry for being so facetious, but the whole thing is farcical. The organisation behind this award, it's a non-profit that seeks to spark interest in aviation in young people. Guess who else is getting the award? Lauren Sanchez. She's become an aviatrix. I gather she's an aviatrix who knows all about bags of tricks as well. Well, Lawrence Sanchez and Harry, my goodness, such elevated company, I can't tell you. Classy with a capital K. You couldn't make any of this up, could you? Well, they have previously given awards to people like Buzz Aldrin, and this year it's going to be 4 inductees. A Navy pilot called Fred George, so at least he'll know how to turn on the engine in a plane. Gosh, I wonder if Harry knows how to turn on an engine in a helicopter. I know he certainly knows how to point a gun. And a former world speed record holder called Steve Hinton. And Harry's award is being given because if you read carefully what they say, he achieved certain things in a training program. Nothing about achieved anything after coming out of the training program. And of course, he achieves it for being a co-pilot and a gunner on an Apache helicopter. Well, royalty doesn't collect awards. Royalty gives out awards. Hollywood types, faux philanthropists, egotists, vulgarians. Look at me, look at me, look at me, I exist and I'm fabulous. They all receive awards. What category do you think Harry is in? Pathetic, but I suppose any photo up at this stage is regarded by them as desirable. They haven't yet learned less can be more. And when you are on a losing wicket, it behooves you to get off the ground and seek shelter in the pavilion. Now we're going to touch upon what I regard as the other moral issue of the day, because there are 2 huge moral issues of the day. The first is the post office scandal, and the second is victims who are not victims but are really culprits posing as if they are victims and being rewarded for what was bad behaviour, and that is then compounded by worse behaviour. And I am appalled that we live in a culture where there is such a lack of recognition of what is desirable behaviour, that the mainstream media will often further the claims of miscreants when they have a duty to call them to order, but they're not doing it. Sometimes because they played a part in creating the problem in the first place, and I am now referring particularly to Associated Newspapers and Sharon Churcher. So here goes. Stretch like a cat, says Lady C. It is not unusual for girls as young as 13 years of age to become, and she uses a word, or he uses a word, I don't know which it is, which we are going to resile away from, shall we say, because this is YouTube. And so we will substitute the word at 13 years of age become physically active, precocious, and want to grow up very quickly, having observed it among friends and people I knew when I grew up. Not all become physical, so substitute the word, which the first syllable is the last syllable of the Sussex's name. Not all become physical at that age due to trauma. I truly hope Virginia Giuffre's victims come forward and receive compensation from her. I think Virginia Giuffre should be stopped in her tracks. I think the woman is poisonous. I think the woman has unconscionably set about getting rewards for misdeeds that she indulged in. And I think I have sympathy for her when she was young. I have more sympathy for her parents, quite frankly, because to have a child like hers, who by her own admission in her Virginia Roberts memoir was off the rails at 13, doing the most dreadful things. I mean, had my brother, my sisters, or me done any of the things that she did, we would never have been able to sit down ever again. We would have been so disciplined, let's put it that way. And yes, I think Stretch Like a Cat has made a very interesting and valid point. What we are speaking about is puberty. And puberty is a natural thing. Nature has dictated that at a certain age, the human being, as well as other animals incidentally, become capable of reproduction. Thereafter, they have reproductive feelings, which are very pleasurable. You don't have to be off the rails to be in touch with what is happening to you at puberty and to derive the natural feelings that go along with the whole matter, shall we say, this being YouTube. And in previous centuries, there was a greater awareness of the fact that young people have stronger feelings in certain regards than older people, and the object of the exercise used to be to get them married off as young as possible as a means of satisfying those biological needs, which would then also enhance civilization by reproducing at an age that nature dictated was people were more fertile and it was easier to reproduce. Because remember, geriatric motherhood starts at 28. Nowadays, 28 is regarded as just coming out of childhood. Well, how does that reconcile with nature? So I think that is a consideration that we should be bearing in mind, that maybe our approach in the end of the last century and into this century has become somewhat didactic, doctrinaire, and maybe unrealistic, because nature doesn't dictate that you have to have emotional maturity. It dictates that you have to have physical maturity. And it is arguable whether some of the 35-year-olds that one runs across nowadays are actually more mature than some of the 15-year-olds of my day, because I can see some of them, and they've been so spoilt and so protected against life. But life isn't something to be protected against. It's something that you should be protected with, not against. We shouldn't be enemies of life. We should be in harmony with life. And of course, one of the ways that were the traditional ways that were used to keep people in line was watching them and fear of right and wrong, morality. We live in a bizarre world where, certainly in England, your child can go to the school and do things that you're not told about. Your child can be given contraception that you know nothing about, and you're not allowed to know about it. It's bizarre. I think we need to appreciate the fact that all societies get certain things wrong at certain times. And I'm all for liberty. I'm all physical pursuits not being made nasty when they're not. And I'm all for, shall we say, liberal attitudes, but not for crazy stupidities that are actually not life-enhancing. Snackwell says, unless I'm missing something, all those girls in J.E.'s employment were free to walk away, never to return. They accepted money for their services. They decided their money was worth their self-respect. Later, when much older, looking back, they feel used, they feel shame, they want to sue, and feeling conflicted. Well, you should be. The fact of the matter is it's only a handful of the many girls. And if what Virginia Giuffre and the courts have been telling us, it was hundreds of girls, and you have 4 or 5 of them making all these claims and demanding compensation. They were old enough to know the difference between right and wrong. And many of their parents took them and picked them up. Back and back and back again. Were they lying to their parents? Certainly the whole case kicked off originally because one of the girls was lying to her parents, and her parents wanted to know where she got all this money from. And that's what kicked off the case originally against Epstein. Was that girl misbehaving? Well, she went back and back and back. I would say she was misbehaving. I think her parents did the right thing. Because in a situation like that, you cannot allow a sleazebag like Epstein to get away with what he's doing. But the fact of the matter is, most of those girls evidently did it with open eyes and open hands as well to collect the money. They weren't prisoners. They weren't being trafficked. Your parents drop you somewhere. Are your parents a part of the trafficking? No. And I'm sorry, when I was 15, I knew the difference between right and wrong. When I was 8, I knew the difference between right and wrong. The Jesuits say, give me a boy to the age of 7 and I'll give you the man for life. The old traditional view was that by the age of 7, you knew the difference between right and wrong. Now, I'm not justifying anything to do with children. I think it's awful and it's always unjustifiable. But the point I'm making is that children who are twice the age of knowing the difference between right and wrong, I'm sorry, they knew what they were doing was wrong. And you're absolutely right, Snackwell. It was money. They were lured. That's why the Lord's Prayer says, lead us not into temptation. It's easy to be led into temptation. And $300 for a massage is pretty tempting to young people. Tempting to older people too, I would imagine, who figure, well, why not? I am not fool said. My take is this. Virginia Giuffre did service Andrew and several powerful, rich, older men. Well, Andrew says she didn't, and I believe him. But she certainly admitted to Epstein that she had, whether she did or not. She got $15,000 from him. That's her evidence. Anyway, my take is this. Virginia Giuffre did service Andrew and several rich, powerful, older men. I think younger ones too. She was willing and was paid and was at least 17 years old. Years later, she saw an opportunity to make even more money and so accused and successfully sued Prince Andrew the idiot. He was the biggest fish and easiest to sue successfully. Yeah, she went after all the big names. There were others that she could have gone after, but she didn't think it was going to be quite so easy to milk them the way she hoped it would be to milk Andrew. And I'll tell you better, without David Boyce and his connections in the legal profession, and without Judge Kaplan and his previous association with David Boyce and with President Clinton, Andrew would have been given the possibility of a fairer trial. He was not given the possibility of a fair trial. It is scandalous what was done to him. And I think it's scandalous when people think that they should pillory him just because he was a prince and because he's unlikable. I don't care how unlikable the man is. If you're innocent, you're innocent. Janet Davy says, well said. If a girl of any age finds herself in a strange and disturbing setting, knows and feels that, gets to leave the building but goes back at her own desire, then how can they expect to act innocent? What a horrible group of people they all are. If there are any girls that were lured there and were interfered with, got to leave and never went back, then those poor girls were the abused, not the girls that went back again and again freely. That's a contract, albeit maybe an unwritten one. Shameful state of affairs is it's all is. Janet Davy, I couldn't agree more. And I'm reading these comments out because they are representative of the fact that so many people out there are seeing through the cacophony and the virtue signaling and the faux bleeding heart nonsense to what the reality is. And the reality is, if you sell yourself, you are a particular sort of person. As simple as that. Tass T says, easy money. They were too good to work at McDonald's or in an office job. Always excuses. Also, they'd have been working a heck of a lot longer than 40 minutes or an hour giving a massage, because that's what was involved. A massage for $300 evidently. And this is 20 and 30 years ago, when $300 was a lot more than it is now. And it's still pretty good considering that they were giving massages. I mean, I think the whole thing is so distasteful and odious, and I think decadent as well, and really rather sick. But distasteful, but we need to be fair and just. Valid GC says, bravo, bravo. I've been saying the same about Virginia Roberts Giuffre for years. I was told I was a victim blamer. Finally, some critical thinking be pressed into service here. Thank you, Lady C, for refusing to dumb things down or placate the virtue signalers. Thank you. For all of us above the age of 50 who made reckless mistakes in young adulthood and live to tell the tale, learn, grow, and hold our own selves accountable for those errors in judgment, all for free, mind you, we can smell faux victimhood 100 miles away. We see clearly just how rotten the Prince Andrew stitch-up is. Let us continue to make noise. I couldn't have put it better myself. And finally, Sandra Pickens says, Virginia Roberts went home to a boyfriend every day after work. Why would she not report it to the police? Because she was being paid well for her services. It makes me sick to listen to these lies. It is so clear she is now cashing in on the Epstein saga. When you think about the poor women and children that are being trafficked worldwide, that nobody is helping, and this is the point. Yet this woman worked every day for Epstein and went home to a boyfriend. Who would believe this rubbish? Andrew has been stitched up by this woman. I'm not a fan of Andrew, but injustice can hit anyone these days. Too many women are cashing in on their past physical, shall we say, it's another word, experiences. Most women have been groped, touched, kissed, whistled at, glared at without their consent, but it was part of growing up. We didn't go suing anyone for it. We would all be very well off if that was the case. Women of the world, we are better than this. Well, I certainly think that a true violation of a woman's person is not on, and I'm sure we all would agree with that. But the fabricated victimhood to which we are being subjected is just sickening, and it does no good to society generally. It does no good to men, and therefore it does no good to women. I mean, whatever happened to slapping a guy's hand away and saying, "Oh, bugger off, jerk," or just my specialty, picking up the hand and removing it as if that's what I used to do. I just ignore, and when he would move it, I just pick up the hand and I just move it off. Without saying a word, that usually did the trick. I mean, honestly, whatever happened to the rough and tumble of everyday life, where everything isn't criminalized, where jokes nowadays are criminalized, innocent actions are criminalized, dubious actions are given no credit whatsoever and are taken to be the worst interpretation possible. How healthy is this? I would submit not very. But you know, the pendulum swings one way, then it swings another. Unfortunately, I will say, I know this from having spoken to lawyers, doctors, and the police. In this country, there are so many false allegations made that a very few complaints actually end up being tried, and even fewer end up, once they are prosecuted, end up being victorious for the complainant. All of this, though, can be used to enhance our knowledge and sharpen our sense of right and wrong, can't it? You know? Situations like this are useful to society because they cause us to examine a little bit more deeply, or hopefully a little bit more deeply, than just jumping on the bandwagon and joining the mob and casting stones because it gives us pleasure to indulge in righteous indignation, which is actually unrighteous indignation. And on that note, I'll say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. Please keep the questions and comments coming in so that I will know what you would like us to be speaking about. Thank you so much. God bless. And if you have truly enjoyed this, please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and take good care.